Hey, this is Victor with VentoBot, and if you want to learn how to create a week's worth of content in only about 10 to 15 minutes a week, stay tuned because in this episode of Don't Kill the Messenger, we're going to cover exactly that. Now, before we begin, if you're serious about creating content and only spending about 10 to 15 minutes a week so that you can stay relevant and stay top of mind on all social media platforms, then head on over to ventobot.com/client content. Again, ventobot.com/client content as we run this November Black Friday special. Now, let's jump into it here. So if you want to create that 10 to that whole week's worth of content in only about 10 to 15 minutes a week, then the first thing that you need to understand is how to create pillar content, or what your pillar content is. Essentially, if you've never heard of this before, it's a couple of things. So the most important way to do this is you have visualize it as your audience is down here. They want to get up here, right? Imagine there being a mountain to get there. Now, the thing about that is when they get there, they're going to stumble, they're going to kind of run into things. There's going to be things that they need to climb over, or like walls they need to go around and whatnot. And whatever those milestones or whatever those obstacles are becomes what you use as pillar content, right? So now, before I forget, if you're serious about building all of that in about 10 to 15 minutes a week, head on over to ventobot.com/client content so that you can actually just spend about 10 to 15 minutes a week and it gets distributed to all of your social media platforms. Now, for example, we have in Colorado here, we have a trail called the Seven Bridges Trail. And what the beautiful thing about that is that there's a specific dedicated path to get there. We start here at the bottom and we go up toward the top. So at the very top, you pass through 7 bridges. And because of that, there are dedicated paths. Of course, there's like different ways to get to those bridges. But once we get to those bridges, there's only one specific thing to cross to get to the other side, because there's a river that we cross through and we kind of zigzag back and forth on as we get to the top of this mountain and this trail. And that's essentially what you're creating as your pillar content. Those bridges are your pieces of content. So for example, let's just say in the case of like running Facebook ads, if you were to start here at the bottom, you have no idea, you've never run ads before, you have like a product that you kind of sell. At the very top, you see profits. You're scaling your ads. You're spending $10,000 to $20,000 a month to scale, and you're bringing in $200,000 a month and stuff like that. Now, in those cases, that's the beginning and the extreme ends, right? That's the beginning of that trail and the end of that trail. However, what's going to happen along the way? So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Let's say this first stumbling block here, right? That first stumbling block is essentially going to be your first piece of pillar content. What is it that they need to even get set up? They first need to have a business manager account. They need to have a funnel in place to actually like create a customer journey for someone. They need to have pixels set up in place so that they're able to actually market to people on Facebook and not just sending cold traffic without tracking to see results of what's happening on the back end, right? So that becomes a pillar content number 1, for example, right? How to create like everything, get ready for Facebook ads. So let's just say that's what it is, right? That's essentially your first milestone, your first step across that path there. Now, what happens next though? Once they have their account up and running, how do they run ads? Maybe they need to know how to target people. They need to know how much they can spend. They need to know anything along the lines of like how to write the ads themselves. So let's say that just becomes the next pillar piece, right? So then like how to write ads and targets. So now we're starting to see this is their pillar content. These are their bridges along that trail that they have to cross and the milestones that they reach. So once we understand this pillar content, and generally most people will have anywhere between 3 to 5 pieces of pillar content that someone will go to from where they are right now, where they want to get to, and where they need to be to get to where that end desired result is, right? So that's essentially how we need to first understand this pillar content piece. And that's kind of the same thing with the 7 bridges, right? We need to know like where we're going. We want to get to the 7th bridge. We want to get to the 3rd bridge. Wherever you want to get to, you need to know that first. And that becomes something that we're not going to talk here. But by the way, if you're serious about creating this content and having it distributed all across all social media platforms, and it only takes you about 10 to 15 minutes a week to create a week's worth of content, then head on over to bentobot.com/client content so that we can get started there. We're running a November Black Friday special for everyone for the first month. Now, as we can see, as people cross these bridges, they're going to get elevated. They're moving up toward their goal. And that is essentially what they're doing. We're creating that pillar content. Again, you have to know what those pieces are, where those milestones are first, and then we create the next step, right? After they start to write ads, they start to, for example, what happens next? They know how to target people. They know how to write ads. They know how to track those ads. What is the next piece? How do they start scaling their budget, right? So that way they're not just spending a ton of money without getting a return in the end. So let's say the next pillar content piece becomes like how to scale, right? So that's essentially, these are the pillar content pieces that I know people have when they're on their way to building that Facebook ads and making a profit from it. Those stories that people hear, that everyone hears about, for example, like, oh, we're spending $10,000 to $20,000 a month and we're making 10 times that. And that is how they do that. They first go through these phases. They have to have everything set up to run Facebook ads to begin with. They need the offer in place. They need the funnel in place. They need their business manager account set up. They need all of that to first understand before they even get started running ads. The next stage then becomes, how to target, how to write the ads themselves, and where to put the placements and all that stuff, right? That is essentially how they do it. So if you can map out this pillar content, it honestly will only take you about 10 to 15 minutes a week to create that content, because now you know exactly what it is that you need to create and you have your week's worth of content. Now, the issue here comes, how do we distribute this content? And that is different than actually creating it. Distributing it, if you are, for example, right now we're on Facebook and we're going to be on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. The issue with that is, how do we distribute this to multiple channels? Well, there's a specific way to do this, and we have it. If you're serious about actually understanding that piece and wanting to do it yourself, head on over to bentobot.com/book so you can get our book for free. Just cover shipping and we'll send it right over to you so that you can create the system yourself and actually have it set up and running, where we actually show you and give you the template on how to do that. However, if you want to not even worry about that and have it take completely care of it for you, then you can head on over to bentobot.com/client content so that we can have it all set up. All you have to do is show up 10 to 15 minutes a week, and the rest of it gets distributed into articles, to social posts, to multiple channels, to podcasts, and so on. And that's all that's required of you, 10 to 15 minutes a week. So once you understand this pillar content part, then you can start to map out everything. And as you saw that I did, I talked about a story, how the trail for 7 bridges is essentially the path that people take for their pillar content. And that's what we want to do with everything. Then when we start talking about our pillar content, right, it becomes very easy to actually do that, because now you start associating stories from here and there that you run into in everyday life, and you're able to better associate the problem and the issue and how to solve it with that story that you've created, right? So again, if you're serious about creating content and staying relevant and top of mind for your audience, then head on over to bentobot.com/client content so that you can go ahead and start to just spend 10 to 15 minutes a week creating a live like this, one video, and the rest of it gets distributed to across podcasts, SoundCloud, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. You can even set it up for Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and just all of your social media platforms with 10 to 15 minutes a week. And that ends today's, I can go into a part 2 of this later on this week or next week, and we can go from there. Talk to you guys soon.